There's a common trope among TTRPG adventures that always ends up being raw roleplay and has never really had a way to give it a mechanical benefit. Player characters have been on adventure after adventure, some of them having complete experienced adventures from before the current campaign even started. Who here hasn't played a character who used to be a city guard who's seen an awful lot and decided to leave their post to become an adventurer, or any of the trillions of different possible backstories you could come up with? No character just appeared and had no experience to speak of. As such, it's normal for these characters to want to share their stories with the rest of the party. Now, what if there was an archetype in Pathfinder 2e that gave you mechanical benefits for sharing these stories and anecdotes? Howdy, my name is Nona, and welcome to my guide to the new Campfire Chronicler archetype in Pathfinder Rival Academies. This is something I've never even thought of, which is something I always respect Paizo for. Especially this late into Pathfinder's lifespan, they're giving us archetypes and new mechanics that I could never see coming. This is literally an archetype that lets you tell stories and metaphors and anecdotes in the middle of combat to buff yourself and your allies. So if this is something that interests you and you might want to use on your character, or you're just like me and find the mechanics of these archetypes incredibly fascinating and can't be bothered to read them yourselves because it's easier to let an attractive blonde guy on the internet tell you about them, then get cozy, grab a drink, and let's dive into this. Because y'all, this is a super cool archetype. It's got a little bit of awkward mechanic stuff here or there that I'll get into, but overall, I think you're really gonna dig it. And of course, I've gotta shill myself out. If you are watching this video the moment it goes live, you can actually click the link in the description to go over to twitch.tv/nonat1s, where I am live streaming right now. We've been having a ton of fun over there now that I'm back to regular scheduled streams, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 1 p.m. Eastern. I would love to see you over there. No pressure. We play a lot of games. We have a lot of fun. Sometimes I guest star with my friends and just get into a bunch of hijinks. Would love to have you as part of the I'm done shilling. Let's just talk about the archetype. So at level 2, you can take the Campfire Chronicler dedication, which has absolutely no prerequisites. I really do like this. There's some implication that the power of this archetype comes from your stories being an offering to like a god or something. I don't read into the lore of archetypes. I want to talk about the mechanics. The number make the brain go. But I like this. It's rare you see an archetype with absolutely no prerequisites, so anybody can take this, which makes sense because anybody can tell a story. Not anybody can tell a good story, but that's up to you to decide how your character tells these stories. When you take this dedication, you become trained in religion and survival, 2 skill proficiencies from 1 dedication, which if you're already trained in both of these, this just becomes trained proficiency in any 2 skills you want. That's already great. And you gain the offer story action, which is really cool. For 1 action in the middle of combat or wherever you happen to be, you just share a story. For the dedication, it just says it's a story of your travels, something applicable. Or I think you could even flavor this as giving a metaphor to help someone understand and improve their situation, because the effect of this is granting yourself a +1 to armor class and a +1 to will saves until the end of your next turn. This is where the weird mechanics sort of start. By using this action, you are only benefiting yourself, but I also kind of like the flavor that your character just likes to hear themselves talk. You talk about how the hardiest clam does not become dinner, and that inspires you yourself to be a little more durable. And then as a follow-up, on the ally's turn, who you shared the story with, they can spend an action on their turn to get the same bonus, +1 status bonus to armor class and will saves. So there's already a few weird things here. It's annoying that your ally has to spend an action to get the boost. It's annoying that you have to have an ally to gain the boost for yourself. You can't just give it to yourself. And it's a little weird you can only share it with 1 ally. You know, I feel like it would make a little bit more sense if you offered your story and then all allies within 30 feet maybe, or if you even want to make it smaller, 15, 20 feet, all allies could spend an action on their turn. Might be a little bit cooler, but it's still useful. Your champion's on the front line, they've got their shield raised, you can offer a story right there at level 2 to give them +1 status bonus to armor class. As a reminder, raising a shield is a circumstance bonus. Their armor is an item bonus, which means offer a story being a status bonus gives you all 3 bonus types to their armor class right at level 2. And the will save bonus is just a cherry on top. Compare this to raising a buckler. Even just raising a buckler is one action that gives you +1 to armor class. This does that, plus a will save, plus your ally can spend an action to duplicate the effect. Or compare it to the Bard's Rallying, what's it called now? Oh god, remaster Y. Rallying Anthem, which sure also gives some mild protection to physical damage, but that gives +1 armor class to all allies. Now, it's not super equal. The Bard for one action gives it to everybody, and this is one action from you and one action from the ally, but this is an archetype, and this is level 2. You get it 2 levels sooner, and it's a lot more engaging, and there's a lot more to it. This action, not to spoil the rest of the archetype, gains more options as you progress through. But as it stands, one action to buff yourself armor class and will save, and one action to buff an ally's armor class and will save on their turn, not too shabby. Let's see if it gets better. The Dead Telltales at level 4 is super flavorful and gives your GM the chance to tell stories in a really cool way. Not only does this give you resistance equal to your level to void or spirit damage dealt by incorporeal, undead, or haunts, which is basically the same thing, but it's a trap, but when you take damage this way from one of those creatures, you learn its story. If that ghost of a peasant walks up and backhands you, God, that kind of hurt. Backhands you with spirit damage, you get to learn their story. Who were they? How did they die? Why are they here? Why haven't they moved on? You just get to know that. It's a really cool way for the GM to be able to give information to the player party through a really cool feat. And I think that's a really undersung ability for feats to have. Feats that not only give you a little mechanical benefit as a player, but give the GM new ways to tell a story. Listener's Boon! This is basically just the Cleric Feat Domain Initiate, except you can only pick a focus spell from the domains of Fire, Travel, Knowledge, and Protection. Plain and simple. It's just, you have 4 options, here's your focus spell, you can have it. You can be focused by telling stories. What is nice about this feat is if you don't already have a spell attack roll proficiency, you become trained when you take it and you increase to expert at level 11. It's not perfect, but it'll keep you useful for a little bit if you have an attack roll as one of them. You can select this feat multiple times, and it's worth mentioning that there is an additional feat for this archetype, which is the Advanced Domain Spell feat. Just if you want the next level up of domain spell available to Fire, Knowledge, Protection, or Travel, you can take that at 8th level. Raging Stories, also a level 4 feat, is the first other option for your share story action. Now, when you share a story, rather than gaining armor class, you can instead cloak your weapon in flames, representing the fervor of your story. All melee strikes made until the end of your next turn deal 2 additional fire damage. And keep that in mind. To the end of your next turn, which means you can share your story, cloak in flames, and all of your attacks over the next 2 rounds are just dealing 2 bonus damage. That's not nothing. Even if you only hit once per round, that's still 4 total extra damage, and it's fire damage, which is one of the most common weaknesses in Pathfinder. Plus, this is going to go up to 4 fire damage at level 7 if you bump religion up to master proficiency, and then 6 fire damage at level 15 if you make it legendary. The coolest part of this is that when you share a story with another ally, you don't have to pick the same benefit. If you want the bonus fire damage, but your champion still wants the armor class, they can choose to take the armor class while you take the fire damage. That is the coolest thing here, is, I'm trying to flavor it, make sense of it, I don't even know, maybe they glean different information from your story than what you were trying to tell them, but it's just so cool that you can tell a story, you're a fighter, so you don't need the armor class as much, you just want to do more damage, but the champion wants to turtle, they take the armor class and the will save, and as you take more feats, you get more benefit options, and your ally and yourself can pick from any benefit you have a feat for. So cool, and honestly, leaves a lot of room open for homebrewing feats for this archetype. But before we even talk about that, let's finish the feats here proper. Cozy Campfire is a classic example of a feat that is dripping, drenched, moist with flavor. I'm not sorry. But it really becomes hard to recommend taking it. You can spend 10 minutes to establish a campfire, which is something that any adventurer can do by default, but this campfire is inherently magical. Specifically, it is imbued with a divine curse, that if any creature within 30 feet of the campfire attempts to make an attack roll, they have to make a will save first. This will be against your class DC or your spell DC, whichever is higher. If they critically succeed their saving throw, they become aware of the curse effect, and they can choose to either stop attacking entirely, or follow through with their attack, and the campfire itself goes out, putting the camp into darkness, assumedly. If they normal succeed, it's a similar effect, except instead of the campfire going out if they follow through with their attack, they just become immune to the campfire themselves. The campfire itself stays lit. On a failure, they take a -2 status penalty to all attack rolls until the start of their next turn, and on a critical failure, their current action is completely disrupted. They cannot finish their attack, and all future attacks take -2 status penalty. That's all this does? I really don't know what it's for. This almost feels like it should have been a skill feat, because you're not going to establish a campfire in the middle of combat, so it's not like you can give this status penalty to opponents like this. It's really only useful if you're in a tense situation where a fight might break out and you're trying to prove that you are not hostile by establishing the campfire, maybe trying to keep the peace. It's just problematic that in every single outcome, even if they critically fail their will save, they can still keep attacking. On a critical failure, they lose 1 attack. A creature has 3 actions, Paizo. I don't know, it's tough. This is a flavorful feat. It's the kind of thing where the GM would hopefully have a creature try to attack, notice the curse, and realize, oh, these people actually don't want to fight. Because the curse does not differentiate friend from foe. So there's actually a world where this campfire outright harms you. Because if you're talking to some bandits around this campfire and they break the peace and attack you, and they make their will save, but your fighter fails, your fighter's taking the penalty and the bandits aren't. I don't know. It's a really cool in concept. The fact that it affects your allies too, again, flavorful. Not a fan. Something I did forget to mention is that the campfire cannot be put out by mundane means. So I guess that's a really cool part of it, in that it is like a holy divine fire. Like a bucket of water will not put this fire out, which is kind of cool. Illuminating Stories at level 6 is another new effect for your share story action. Now, when you share a story, you get +1 to all recall knowledge checks until the end of your next turn, and you can recall knowledge specifically about the topic of your story as a free action. This is where it gets really weird in my opinion. Like, if you're fighting a troll and your character has never encountered a troll, could you offer a story about a fictional troll they might have read in a book once, and then because you shared that story about Ogark the troll who went to dinner, can you then get +1 on your recall knowledge to learn more about the troll you're fighting as a free action? Is that how it works? Alternatively, if you know your friend knows something about them, let's say your friend is a high intelligence wizard who knows a lot about creatures, then you could tell that wizard, hey, here's the story of Ogark and how he had garlic bread. And you just choose to light your fists on fire. But on the wizard's turn, they can spend their action, get the +1 to recall knowledge, and then make a free recall knowledge check on the troll. It's a weird one. This +1 becomes a +2 once you are a master in religion, and a +3 once you're legendary. Combine this with like a monster hunter ranger, and you've actually got a really great combo. Hell, if you are a monster hunter ranger, taking this would be damn good. Flickering Stories is actually really sick. You tell a dark and deceitful story full of twists and turns, and your literate oratory performance actually cloaks you in shadows, making you concealed, which of course the creature you shared the story with can also choose that benefit, or become really smart, or light their weapon on fire, or become higher armor class. This is such a cool archetype once you start stacking the available options on top of each other. This just becomes 1 action, become concealed, which is not bad. There's no cooldown, it doesn't use a resource. You can do this every single turn if you want to. And remember, concealment just means all things targeting you have a 20% chance to miss. Straight up. Against a BBEG big boss fight, this is fantastic. Tales of the Road is cool. If you have ever been to a city before, you can roll recall knowledge effectively at trained proficiency. Why do I say effectively? Because even if you don't have the lore skill, let's say lore Absalom, you can add your level as proficiency with a +2 circumstance bonus. That +2 circumstance bonus basically being a faux trained proficiency on top of your level. This is fine. It sucks that you sort of have to have been to the city before to access this benefit, but it does effectively mean everywhere you have been, you have trained proficiency in the lore of that place. This additionally means every new place you visit, once you've been there for, I'd say as a GM, you'd have to spend at least 24 hours in the place, you can add that to your list of lores, because this doesn't have a cooldown, this doesn't use a focus point or a spell slot or any resource whatsoever. So you can almost have this additional spreadsheet, not spreadsheet, it's called a list, of cities and towns you've been to that you can now just roll recall knowledge for specifically. Oh, we're looking for the lost Imperial dragon who flew away? Well, I've been to Cheliax before. GM, can I roll recall knowledge to know if Cheliax has any history associated with Imperial dragons? It doesn't? I just pulled this example out of my ass? I'm asking too many questions? I'm actually making statements that just end with a question mark? I should just move on to the next feat and get this bit over with because it's not funny and nobody's laughing. And the final level 14 feat for Campfire Chronicler is Stories of Home. Once per day, you can just spend 10 minutes to give your allies a long rest. Now, it's not as crazy as it sounds. You don't get spell slots back, it doesn't immediately recover all your once per day abilities or focus points, but it does recover hit points equal to your level times your con modifier, and it reduces any and all conditions that would be reduced by a long rest, namely drained and fatigued. Also doomed. Never forget doomed.
You will die.
What this means is that having a level 14 Campfire Chronicler on your team means that instead of those conditions only going down by 1 value per day, specifically Drained and Doomed, which can have very high values, upwards of 4 or 5 and you're dead, those can typically only go down either by 1 per day or with a specific spell to reduce them. But this means you can reduce them by 2 per day and have a quick little 10-minute heal. That heal isn't worth very much in the world of medicine checks and battle medicine, but it is only 10 minutes, whereas treating wounds on everybody can take a lot of time. This is nice. I'm a little bit sad that's where the Campfire Chronicler ends. I feel like there's a lot of room to expand upon it, but I think that's where you can work with your GM and your character in particular, and maybe come up with your own unique stories that you can share with your party to give them those optional benefits. Like if you're a fisherman or a druid, maybe you can have a story of the wilds that grant bonuses to survival or whatever for a turn. I don't know why you would need it for a turn, but I'm spitballing ideas here. I don't script these videos. It would just be cool, you know? Maybe you've got an Afridi as an ancestry, as a versatile heritage, and you have stories about the plane of fire that grants fire resistance for a turn. You know, get creative with this. This is an archetype, I would say, even if you're not super comfy writing homebrew, it'd be a really safe place to start. You've got so many examples of balance. +1 armor class, +2 damage, the concealed condition. Play with those. If you've been looking for a chance to flex your homebrew muscles, or even just get into it at all, start by writing a new campfire feat. What kind of bonus can you share with your allies and yourself? You might just surprise yourself what you might come up with.